Good evening. My name is Jerry McPherson, Director of Economic Empowerment for the Greater Phoenix Urban League, and I would like to welcome you all to our next installment of Meet the Leaders. Tonight we got a wonderful broadcast with yet again a host of panelists that are well informed and ready to deliver the information that you need to you this evening. As always, we ask you to like, comment, share. Let the world know that you are with us. We want as many people on this broadcast as possible. Tonight's topic, COVID and the classroom. We'll be talking with our panelists to learn a bit how the COVID-19 pandemic is affecting our most vulnerable population, our children. What impact does it have on their education? What impact does it have on their health? What impact does it have on their future career and collegiate prospects? We're going to get all those questions answered tonight. But again, before we get started, we need you to like, comment, and share. Let the world know that you're with us. There's no excuse in having this and sharing this information if we don't have the necessary ears to hear and tune in on it. So please take a moment, like, comment, share, whether you're on Facebook or YouTube. Let the world know that you're with us. If you are with us right now, please let us know where you're tuning in from. Let us know the city or your school district. We want to get a better understanding of where our audience hails from, so that we might be able to curate the questions to your needs. And of course, as always, we Meet the Leaders. You have the opportunity to ask your questions towards the end of the broadcast. So if you do have a question that comes to mind, don't hesitate. Feel free to drop it in the comments. You can do it now, you can do it during the broadcast, you can do it later in the evening. Nonetheless, we'll make every effort to get your questions answered. So again, like, comment, share, let the world know that you're with us. We know we got a few folks joining now. Good to see you all. And again, let us know where you're hailing from. Yeah, our panelist today is Dr. Ceci Mayes. She is the assistant superintendent for the Cartwright School District. In addition, we'll have Hortensia Kennedy, school administrator and educator in Pinal County. We have Devin Del Palacio, who's returning to us from a previous broadcast, president of the Tolleson School Board, as well as Nia Ware, a concerned parent within the Deer Valley Unified School District. But prior to that, we'll be speaking with Will Humble, executive director from Arizona Public Health Association. So again, before we get started with tonight's broadcast, please like, comment, share. We see we have Gisette Knight tuning in from Levine. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Before we get started, we'll have a message from President and CEO of the Greater Phoenix Urban League, Mr. George Dean. Take it away, George.
Good evening. I'm George Dean, President and CEO of the Greater Phoenix Urban League, and I welcome each of you to this month's Meet the Leaders Forum, COVID and the Classroom. The coronavirus, COVID-19, has been with us for over a year and has had a major impact on the lives of almost every American. Nationwide, there have been over 500,000 deaths attributed to COVID-19, and in Arizona, almost 16,000. Arizona's first known death from the disease occurred in mid-March of 2020. In addition, many small businesses have gone out of business. Schools have gone to virtual learning. And as I said earlier, the lives of almost every American and Arizonans have been impacted. Tonight, Meet the Leaders Forum is primarily centered on the impact of the disease on education and what the vaccine will be able to accomplish to control the virus and get the society back to some semblance of normalcy. Very pleased to have as our guest Mr. Will Humble, the former director of the Department of Health Services for the state of Arizona, Devin Del Palacio, president of the Tolleson School Board, Nia Ware, a concerned parent, Dr. Celia Mays, assistant superintendent of the Cartwright School District, and Hortensia Kennedy, teacher and administrator in Pinal County, and so forth. So these This panel is well informed, and I look forward to hearing what they have to say and the impact on COVID and the classroom. So stay tuned, take notes if you have to, but whatever you do, listen closely because they have some great information for you. Thank you, and Jerry, back to you.
Thank you, President Dean. And as always, thank you for the 28 years of service to the Greater Phoenix Urban League and the 47 years of service to the Urban League. So I will first, but before we get into tonight's discussion, wanted to remind you that please take a moment, like, comment, share, let the world know that you're with us. This has been my my go-to phrase. It just rolls off my tongue at this point. But again, we want to let as many people know that this broadcast is happening so that the information can get to the ears that need to hear them. And I guess the other housekeeping wanted to wish the women out in the audience a happy Women's History Month. Look forward to hearing and learning more about some of the historical figures within the women's movement, the civil rights, the women's civil liberties movement, best way that I can describe that. Before we get into our panel discussion talking about COVID in the classroom, we have a special guest. Joining us today is Will Humble. Will Humble is Executive Director of the Arizona Public Health Association, and we'll be talking about the COVID-19 vaccine and the impact that it's having on our community. Will, welcome to the broadcast.
Thanks, Jerry, and thanks for the invitation. Happy to be here this evening. So yeah, let me talk about where we are with the vaccine, and then we can get into a little back and forth, Jerry. I think you and I will have some Q&A here in a bit. But so we're fortunate that we actually have a third vaccine now that's available and been authorized by the Food and Drug Administration. Everyone by now has heard of the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccine. Those are the vaccines that you've seen so much about, and some of you, hopefully some of your family members have been vaccinated with that vaccine. The FDA just authorized another vaccine from Johnson & Johnson yesterday, and fortunately, they actually have some produced, and some of that Johnson & Johnson vaccine is going to be arriving in Arizona tomorrow, I think. And so let's talk a little bit about how the rollout has occurred thus far. And there's a little bit of news in the last hour or two, too, that I could sort of touch on. But as you remember, the initial priority groups in Arizona came with healthcare workers that have direct patient care. That was called people category 1A, and then persons 75 and above. And that was the initial focus. And I did support that. But I have been very critical of the Ducey administration and the health department in particular for the way that they rolled out this vaccine in my opinion, a thoughtless way, especially for communities of color, low-income parts of the state. As you know, this is a purely online system, which in and of itself, is bad. But the way they did it made it so much worse, and that the computer system that they built was not tested, and it wasn't tested with users, and it was very difficult for seniors of any age. 75 years and up. It was not an intuitive system, and it's been very frustrating, in particular for all seniors across the entire state. But in particular, when I was making an appointment for my parents, who are both 87, I discovered by just doing it myself, I could tell that this system was providing real disadvantages for low-income families. First of all, you had to have a good computer. You had to have a broadband connection with Wi-Fi. You needed to. The system only works on, I think they fixed it now, but for a month or two, it only worked on Chrome as the only browser that would be effective, and something called Firefox. These are not things that are intuitive for seniors, whose careers didn't overlap with computers that much. And so I was really disappointed with the way the state health department rolled out that system. And then you add to the fact that the appointments come available on a very small window of opportunity. Like this morning, they opened up, the State Health Department opened up, I think, about 15,000 appointments at 9 o'clock in the morning, and they were all gone before 10:30 a.m. Well, that means if you have a job in the community where you need to be at work during that window of opportunity, that meant that you as a working person would just not have an opportunity to use that system to make an appointment for your mom or your dad. It's not fair that it's that way. And so that's what I've been really pushing hard, is for the State Health Department to come up with a system that's more fair for everybody, especially communities of color and low-income parts of the state. So I began to press through journalists that I know to get the state and the county health department to release information on the distribution of vaccine in the Phoenix area. And we were finally able, and across the state, and we were finally able to get that information from Maricopa County Public Health. And it confirmed what I had already suspected, which is that the disadvantaged communities, lower income parts of the state, were just vaccinated at a much lower level. And it's just not fair. Look, these are the very same communities that have borne the brunt of this pandemic from the very beginning. And now, as we roll out vaccine, they set up a system that also disadvantages those very same communities. And I've been pressing very hard, and I will continue to do so, to urge and hold accountable the administration to actually try to get this vaccine so that it's easier to get in some of these parts of town. And one of the great ways to do that would be through federally qualified health centers, places like Mountain Park, Adelante Healthcare, NOAA Healthcare. Many of you are familiar with federally qualified health centers. That's a perfect place to roll out the vaccine in some of these areas that have just not had the same opportunities as the wealthy parts of the state. Likewise, the federal pharmacy program that has been a priority for the Biden administration, I really am a big evangelist for that, because it brings the vaccine right into the community and allows people to bypass that complicated state health department website. And you can see the URL code at the bottom of the screen here, which is where you can find the list of pharmacies in Maricopa County that have vaccine available. So I'm going to keep pressing to make sure that this vaccine is distributed in a fair way. It has not been so far, and that's a real disgrace, in my opinion. It drives me crazy when I see, the State Health Department have these statements that come up on their website that say it's making sure that this vaccine is available to all Arizonans is a top agency priority. Okay, great. That's a statement. That's not a plan. That's not this is how we're going to do it. This is how we're prioritizing our resources. This is how we're making sure that the vaccine is actually getting into those lower income communities. And this is how we're going to measure our progress. None of that has been said by them. And I'm going to continue to do whatever I can to make at least the public know that this has not been a fair rollout so far. And I still have not to this day seen a plan that is fair. You will still, when you open up the newspaper in the morning tomorrow, you will see that the State Health Department has made a decision just an hour ago to move the age of qualification for the vaccine down to 55 years old, and moving towards a strict age-based system with some exceptions for some healthcare workers. Teachers will continue. I know this is COVID in the classroom. Teachers are still prioritized, and so teachers that still haven't gotten vaccinated, of course, still can. At least they can qualify if they can find a vaccine.
So, well,
yeah.
If I can interject, and kind of wanted to talk about the federally qualified health centers. Can you elaborate on that a bit more, or what exactly that is, and where would they be located around the valley?
Yeah, so federally qualified health centers have been a long-standing program sponsored by the federal government to get to make sure that there's to at least improve the access to care in low-income communities. And so FQHCs, you might hear them called FQHCs. You might just hear them called community health centers. One of the most prominent ones is Mountain Park Health Center. There's one on Baseline and I think 7th Avenue down there in the south part of Phoenix. There's the NOAA clinics. There's the Adelante clinics. Taros has some community health or federally qualified health centers. The Valley-wise set of clinics are part of those. So it's a specific program that's designed to intentionally get better healthcare into lower income communities. And they are the places that have the actual connection to their patients and know their phone number and can text them and can proactively bring vaccines to these communities that have been shortchanged thus far during the pandemic and the vaccine rollout.
So to be clear, these facilities are not currently offering the vaccine in any sort of massive way, but in your opinion, this would be the
yes. So
community
yeah.
members.
So the federal government is through the Biden administration. They made this a priority. I think I saw Vice President Harris announce this, that they were really getting vaccine through the retail pharmacy program into communities directly, so that governors and health directors can't hijack that vaccine for some of these higher income areas. And they are beginning to ship directly to federally qualified health center. So the Biden administration is doing their part to make sure that vaccine is being prioritized towards these areas. What we have not yet seen in Arizona is that the state health department is prioritizing vaccine in the same way that the federal government is towards low-income communities with mobile clinics and community health centers. So I'll give you an example of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine I just mentioned earlier that was authorized yesterday. I read that that there's 56,000 doses of vaccine that will be coming to the state health department that they will be able to prioritize of that new Johnson & Johnson vaccine. What I would like to see is a big chunk of that vaccine go directly to community health centers and mobile clinics so that we can make more progress in these parts of town that have really been underserved with respect to the vaccine and borne the brunt of infections throughout this pandemic. So we could do a lot better in terms of allocating that vaccine towards exactly the kinds of outlets that would improve our vaccination rates in these parts of town. Yeah, and we're not doing it right now.
So I have about just two more questions before we kind of release you from your obligation to the broadcast. But what should community members who are interested in receiving the vaccine, what should they be doing right now? I know we have the website scrolling at the bottom, but in line with increasing the access to the vaccine, is there a strategy that you would suggest, whether it's calling their local representative or
Yeah. So let me talk a little bit about how. So here's the thing. With the state health department moving the age down to 55 now, that means that it's going to get there's going to be increasing competition for these limited vaccines. What that means is that our seniors, especially low-income seniors who don't have somebody to help them make that registration, are going to be soon facing even more stringent competition for this vaccine. And so kind of a call to action for the community is to reach out to the seniors within your community, especially those seniors that are not familiar with how to use computers or how this whole system works, to create a network so that you can provide assistance for them, so to help them make that appointment. So like my example was, my parents are 87. I mean, there was just basically no way that they would have been able to figure out that system on their own. And so I was the one that helped them to make those appointments. But not every senior has somebody like that. And so a call to action to the community is to reach out to those folks that haven't been vaccinated yet, especially those folks over 65, and identify like a mentor or an assistant to help them navigate the system and make those appointments, either through the website that you see at the bottom of the screen. That's the Maricopa County Find Vaccine, which you can find vaccine at these pharmacies, as I mentioned, which is a priority for the Biden administration, or with this big drive-through site that you see so much on television of, they are opening some appointments, I think on Wednesday, but you've got to be Johnny on the spot and be the person that knows that those vaccines are coming open. My main recommendation, to be honest with you, is to use that URL you see at the bottom and identify some vaccine at Walgreens or Safeway or Albertsons or Fry's within your neighborhood, and help seniors that haven't had that help and don't understand how to use the system to make those appointments and help them with it.
Thank you so much, Will. And again, call to action for everyone in the community, friends, family. You have your neighbors that I guess you may be better aware if they are eligible for the vaccine at the current phase of it, right? So yeah, call to action for everybody. Just pick up the phone, check in on your neighbor, do the human duty to kind of check in and care for others. So Will, I know we're coming up on time. Just wanted to give you an opportunity for some final thoughts to share with the audience regarding the vaccine and getting access to it.
Yeah, I'm going to keep doing my policy, what I can do. You at the Urban League can add your voice to the chorus of people that are saying, Governor Ducey and Director Christ, this system is not fair, and we are demanding that you fix it and make it easier for persons of color and low-income communities to have an opportunity, just like the wealthy have had at this vaccine. You can look at the data. The data do not lie. The North Scottsdale area, the rich parts of town are fully vaccinated. And you can see a corridor west of I-17 from Glendale all the way down into South Phoenix, 85009. And that is an underserved area that has been at a disadvantage because of the decisions that Governor Ducey and Director Christ have been making. This isn't bad luck, and this is not vaccine hesitancy. This is an uneven playing field. And I'm doing what I can. I know you're doing, you can. Use your community leaders to hold these folks in the executive branch here in Arizona accountable for the decisions that they're making that are disadvantaging low-income persons and communities of color.
Will, I cannot thank you enough for your time and the information that you shared with our audience. We greatly appreciate it. Of course, I take you up on that challenge to make sure that the Urban League is doing their part to get awareness out and advocate for the community members that we support. So I thank you for your time and appreciate you challenging us in that way. So thank you dearly.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Well, sorry about that, Will. Hit the button a little bit too quickly. My apologies. But Will, thanks again for joining us and sharing that information with us. But again, so now it's a call to action to the community members. I think collectively we all need to get involved and coalesce our voice and speak to the decision makers within our state to make sure that our community is being served equally. And then a message to the community members. We understand that there's this distrust, this skepticism about taking the vaccine. We did a whole program on it a couple of months ago. We understand, we know it, but the reality is other communities are taking advantage of this. So the idea that we are, somehow being left out of the process, yet being targeted with it as well, both of those things cannot be true. So other communities are taking advantage of this. I think it is our duty to make sure that we spread awareness of this, of the vaccine and the benefits of it. Because again, lives are at stake, and it cannot continue to be the conversation that our community is being targeted with this, and it's living off of the history or living off of the history and letting that influence today's decisions. But we will continue the conversation, and again, Urban League will be sure to take you up on that challenge. Will. Now we'll segue into the next portion of our program. We'll be discussing COVID in the classroom. We have a host. We have a host of panelists to talk to some of the concerns and share their various perspective within the education system. First of which, I would like to introduce Devin Del Palacio, President of the Tolleson School Board. Devin, welcome to the broadcast.
Thank you for having me. Looking forward to our conversation.
Thank you so much, Devin. And again, you are the first person to be on this program twice, so you just set a record. I'm looking forward to the conversation as well. Next, I would like to introduce Mrs. Nia Ware, who is a parent with children in the Deer Valley Unified School District, able to provide the perspective of a concerned parent. Hello, Nia.
Hi, Jerry. Thanks so much for, again, having me on the panel today.
Oh, it is our pleasure. Again, we wanted to have, a wide array of perspective on this. And certainly, I'm sure many people in the audience share the perspective that you have. So know that you are providing the voice for the millions in attendance tonight. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Next, I would like to introduce Artensia Kennedy, school administrator and educator in Pinal County.
Hello, thank you for having me.
And I guess of note, Artensia is also a member of our Greater Phoenix Urban League Young Professionals. So everyone in the audience that is a YP, you got some representation on the panel today.
Yeah.
So you too have some pressure because you're representing the YPs as well. And last but not least, I would like to introduce Dr. Ceci Mayes, Assistant Superintendent with the Cartwright School District. Ceci, welcome to the broadcast.
Good evening. Thank you for having me as well. I appreciate the opportunity. I was just going to share that as Assistant Superintendent of District Operations, I've had the pleasure of serving our community in Maryville in the Cartwright School District under the leadership of our amazing superintendent, Dr. Leanne Aguilar-Lawler. And so in my current position, along with our COVID-19 task force and our risk manager, we've been leading the efforts to plan the mitigation plan and just ensure everything that we have in that plan is in place. And so I'm excited to have this opportunity to share our journey with COVID in the schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mayes. And again, we are grateful for each of you for sharing your time, energy, and expertise with the Greater Phoenix Urban League and our audience. So I will actually just do a quick round robin. If everyone can go, just kind of tell the audience a little bit about yourself, maybe take 1 or 2 minutes so our viewers can get a better understanding of who you are and the perspective that you bring to the conversation. We'll start with Devin.
Well, good evening again. My name is Devin Jones Del Palacio. I serve as the president of the Tolleson Union High School District. I'm also the chairman for the National Black Council School Board members, and I've been on the board now for 6 years. So I have the honor of serving in my second term. And so the past 6 years, I've been deeply involved in public education and advocacy. Outside of that, I also am the director of community relations for Big Brothers Big Sisters. So a lot of my experience stems directly with working with youth development, and public education policy and advocacy. Again, and I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Devin. And Nia, would you like to go next?
Sure. Great. Good evening again, everyone. Nia Ware, and grateful to be on this panel representing the parents as well. By day, I like to say I'm the global marketing manager for IT company dealing in the cloud, but all times of the day, I am a parent of 2 within the Deer Valley Union School District at a K through 12 school. So I'm very excited to not only share some of the concerns I think that we have as parents, but also love to learn from the rest of the panelists as well too on the different things that they're doing in their school district. So again, happy to be here on the panel. And again, thanks for inviting me.
Thank you, Nia. I can't say enough, to speak to the responsibility as a parent, and sharing your voice to that. So we would definitely appreciate the conversation. Artensia.
Yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Artensia Kennedy. I've been in education. This is my 15th year. I actually started out as a sub where I'm from. I'm from Gary, Indiana. I moved to Phoenix area 4 years ago. Well, it will be 4 years. At the school that I work right now, it is in Pinal County. It is a pretty small school. The area is a very rural area. We serve almost 600 students, 6th through 12th grade. Also, some of the things that I do at the school is dealing with everything that's dealing with academics. And also I am on the board for the ACT, the national test that students used to take, but they're not taking right now due to COVID. So yes, that's a little bit about me. And thank you, Jerry, for inviting me to come on this panel. I'm excited.
Thank you so much, Artensia. I owe you so much, and we'll talk about that at another time. Dr. Myers.
Yes, thank you. So I serve, as I shared, in the Cartwright Elementary School District. It's a pre-K through 8th grade school district. Prior to the pandemic, we had just over 16,000 students that were enrolled in our district. And unfortunately, through this pandemic, we're just over 15,000. And so And I think that speaks to, again, just what's going on in the pandemic and the concerns that we have as educators and parents. I do, like I said, I'm excited to share about our journey. And so thank you.
So we'll get to our first question. And again, we'll give everyone an opportunity to answer this question. And it is, as of today, where do each of your respective school districts stand on students returning to the classroom? Again, we'll start with Devin.
All right. Thank you, Jerry. So let me first provide you with some context. In the Tolleson Union High School District, up until recently, we had decided to follow the metrics and the CDC guidelines for reopening, which means we've been virtual since the onset of this pandemic. We've only served our students without housing and our most vulnerable special ed students on campus. And that's just because we didn't meet the CDC guidelines for reopening. Our community spread was in deep red. And as a matter of fact, we're still in deep red. But as of last week, the board voted to welcome back students after spring break, which is March 22nd. Now, obviously, this is a very hot issue, a very serious one at that. So I can tell you that it wasn't a unanimous decision to welcome back students on March 22nd. Our district was hit hard, just like a lot of districts by this pandemic. We've lost 3 staff and 1 student, a 16-year-old, a sophomore. So this decision did not come lightly on us, and I was one of the board members to vote no to reopening, just because, and again, our community spread is still above 20%, which is in the red. So, but obviously there is a lot of political pressure and discussion about getting folks back into the classroom, and so that certainly had its play in the decision to reopen. But as of right now, students are set to come back March 22nd. We're offering 2 options. We're giving students, parents 2 options. So we have an option for parents who want to send their students in person, and then we'll have a option for parents who choose to send their kids virtual or still keep them in a virtual learning environment.
So a parent will have the option to send the child back to school beginning March 22nd, was it?
Yes, sir. March 22nd.
And Nia, would you like to share the status from the school district that you are in?
Yes, actually, I can. Yes, I'd love to share that. Mid-September, the Deer Valley Union School District, the board actually decided that, as was just stated, we got 2 options as parents to send our children in person, or you could attend a virtual option, which was a little bit different than the virtual option they were offering as a whole from last year. So as of September, again, in the Deer Valley Union High School District, we have been in school and in person. And as a parent myself, I did have to make a very hard decision with my children to send them both back into the classroom. So they have been in school, in person in school, since about mid-September.
Thank you, Nia. And Hortensia, can you tell us a little bit about the school district that you're in?
Yes, for our school in Pinal County, we gave a survey in August to the parents via email to state if you want your child to go remote or back in person. We were back in person in September, but the numbers were really high around Thanksgiving time. So we actually were back remote. So we are back in the building. All employees are back in the building as of February. We were back. And students have an option of going remote or going in person. So that is where we are right now. They are all using the same program. It's called Ingenuity. So all of the classwork is put on Ingenuity, the curriculum, everything for the students. They just have to log on to a Zoom meeting, either if you in person or if you are remote. And that's how teachers take attendance. And that is what we do every single day.
Thank you, Hortensia. And Dr. Myers, please tell us a bit about the status at Cartwright School District.
Yes, thank you. Similar to what Mr. Del Palacio explained, the Cartwright School District, we too have been following the metrics, and we too have been in high transmission, so just red altogether. Even I was reviewing our metrics, and We were as high as 878 people per 100,000 carrying the virus just in our 3 zip codes, as high as 32% testing positive, and even within the hospitals, 14.5 test with COVID-like illness. And so just very red, high transmission. And we've been providing that distance learning for our students all year long. And we too, as Mr. Del Palacio shared, have lost staff members, and our staff members have shared the stories that of family that they've lost. And so it's been quite a challenge as a district. Our last board meeting, our governing board did have a very lengthy conversation and considered the feedback from parents, from staff, from community, our kids, and just, safety has remained the priority. And with all the red and the concern, our board did unanimously vote to continue distance learning for the remainder of the school year. But we are preparing and ready to offer summer school on site. We too, through our distance learning plan, we do have learners on site, and we've tried to keep in good communication with our families. Our principals have been working hard to keep that line of communication open. So if there are any concerns, our families know they can reach out to their school principal, and we'll work it out so that they can have that on-site support. But I think for the most part, maybe a campus has 75 kids. So most of our families have shared that they'll remain, there are great concerns, and so they've remained on distance learning.
So, and obviously it goes without saying, this is a difficult decision for everyone involved, from the parents to the administration to the teachers inside the classrooms, with each of you sharing personal stories of having actually lost faculty and students. It just hits home that, it's a constant reminder that COVID-19 is taking lives. And, again, we're talking about children at this point. So I guess there's going to be the heightened level of concern that, we do need to proceed with caution and understand the impact of this. So with that being said, for those of the schools that have opened, what are they doing to mitigate the risk of transmission between the students and faculty? If anybody would like to.
I will go as far as what we do at our school, because I'm not sure if I said this already, but because a lot of teachers have quit at the beginning of the school year, I also had to return back into the classroom. So I have administrative duties, and I'm also a classroom teacher as well. So at the beginning, when the students walk in, we automatically have them sanitize their hand. There are stations all over their school. So after, they are supposed to wear their mask all day long. If they do not have a mask, we do provide them with a mask. After class, we let them out 2 minutes before the bell rings, and they are to line up to their next classroom. At that time, as a teacher, we are to clean every desk, every chair, disinfect the whole entire room before the next class is able to come in. So that is what we're doing as far as sanitation.
Does anyone have any input to share on how their respective school districts are handling the pandemic for those that are in school?
Jerry, I can go as well. From a parent perspective, from what I see from the outside, obviously coming in, and what my children also share with me, and also the teachers share with us as well. Same comments. Our children do have to come in. It is a sanitation station, as my children are used to saying. They also do have to wear a mask all day long. There is not obviously 6 feet in the classroom. They do as much separation as they can. I know they get a little mask breaks, which my children do enjoy, but they even go as far as for lunch. They are sitting in the same seats. It is in the same direction, so that they can obviously monitor and be monitored if something was to happen, or for contact tracing. Even for my oldest child, they are in pods. So with that being, you're in a group of either 3 to maybe 4 or 5. You must stay with those same students throughout your entire day as you are transitioning into each classroom. And again, they do that for contact tracing purposes as well. And as our other panelists said as well too, it is also every time they are cleaning the desks after every single classroom as well.
Got it. And Dr. Myers, I know we spoke earlier, and you had suggested that you want to provide some response to that question.
Yeah, we are doing the same things for those that are on-site learning. And then the other things that I was just going to share, even though we are continue with our virtual learning, right now we're working extremely hard our staff is concerned about the air filtration. And so we've taken the extra step. Right now we have ionization units that are being installed throughout all of our campuses to ensure that the air is being filtered to the highest degree possible. And then even with recent CDC guidelines that added vaccine as one of the mitigation strategies. Right now, we're doing all that we can to educate on the vaccine. I really appreciated everything that Mr. Humble shared and couldn't agree more. We've had to ask our nurses, parent liaisons, and just equip as many people at our school sites as possible to be familiar with the system. So as any of our staff or community members have needed help registering to get the vaccine or for that appointment, there are several people on site that know how to do that. And because it was quite a challenge from the beginning. And so I was appreciated hearing his passion about that. So those were the things that I would say to add. And just some of our panelists spoke to the extensive sanitation that's taking place. And so over district operations, we're making sure that there's extensive training. We've had to purchase specialized equipment just so that we can sanitize as efficiently as possible. And then with that specialized equipment, it's not enough just to do it, but you got to do it right. And so we've been ensuring that our custodial staff are well trained in addition to our staff, and just all the education that needs to take place to ensure that everything is disinfected to the highest degree possible.
Thank you, Dr. Mayes. Yeah, I actually have another question. I wanted to stick with you, Dr. Mayes, and it is, from your perspective, is the quality of education provided to our children lessened by the virtual learning environment?
Yes, I know that has been quite a challenge, especially as we know that because of our high transmission rate, we continue to be in virtual and providing that virtual learning experience. And the fact is we know that it's not the same as being on site, but we've had no choice because of the risk involved, and safety is priority. And so as much as there are challenges, I really just want to share just how proud I am of all the staff within our Cartwright Elementary School District. Our teachers have worked so hard, our staff, our principals, our superintendent keeps in contact with our families, our staff, just on a regular basis. And so they've shared how much they appreciate that communication. She holds regular meetings with our parents, and we've also provided multiple surveys just to always know what exactly the needs are so that we can provide for them. And I'm certain that the board did consider that as they made the decision. Our families were sharing, there's such fear right now and risk, especially because our numbers were so high, that they were sharing. The fact is despite the challenges, their children were enjoying the virtual learning experience. They'd really connected with the teachers. Our teachers are constantly sending materials home just so that students have exactly what they need to engage. They're doing all that they can to build relationships with kids. We know how vital relationships are. And so that's what our community did share, was their greatest concern was keeping the same teacher. Their children love their teacher and they wanted to maintain that. And so we just, like I said, I appreciate that our superintendent is constantly getting feedback from our families, from our community, so that we can adjust and make sure that we're constantly refining what we do to provide the best education that we can in our current circumstances.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Myers. Artentia, same question.
Well, just like, she stated, a lot of the teachers did, and also some of the students really enjoyed doing the virtual learning. A lot of our high school students was able to get jobs at local places like McDonald's and different things of that around this time. So they were able to earn money around this time. So a lot of those students did decide to just stay virtually. Because a lot of our families, we serve a very low income. We even have students who families don't even have running water. So a lot of those families kind of decided to stay home because they didn't want to put themselves at risk or put any of us at risk when it comes to COVID. So virtual learning, we have learned a lot about virtual learning. The students stated that it allowed them to be more independent, more responsible, and they were able to read a little bit more, opposed to just a teacher like myself who just come in and just write on a board and they just take notes. They were able to actually be able to read things and actually be able to answer those critical questions.
Thank you, Hortensia. I want to move on to the next question, and Devin, we'll give you the first crack at this. So, given that some parents have chosen the virtual learning environment, and obviously, when the pandemic first hit, it was a learning process for everyone involved. So, with that being said, what can parents do to ensure the best quality of education in the virtual environment?
That's a great question, Jerry. And before I answer that, I just want to briefly touch on the last question. In terms of the virtual learning experience, I believe that there's a narrative that's shared that often says that it's certainly challenging and unproductive. And while I'm not going to say it's not challenging, I do want to say we have seen some success with the virtual learning environment. So much so that our graduation rates have actually increased last year in this virtual learning environment. So I just wanted to provide an alternative narrative that we do have a lot of students who are excelling in this environment. Now, in terms of what parents can do, to ensure that the quality of education is optimal in a learning environment, I think it's as simple as just checking in on your student, monitoring and just asking them, what did they learn? Do they have any assignments? Do they need any assistance? Because oftentimes teachers will set aside time for tutoring. They'll set aside time for extra assistance for those kids who need it, especially in a virtual environment. And so I would just say, just simply check in. I understand that for many parents, a lot of what our kids are learning these days is probably different from what they grew up and what they learned back in school. And so while we're not asking you to be an expert in math and science, what we are asking is for you to check in on your student, pop in there, making sure that they don't need any extra assistance. And if they do, let's get them the help they need. But it's as simple as just checking in and to seeing what's going on and monitoring that they are actually in the classroom doing their work online.
Thank you for that response, Devin. Again, I don't have any children, but I have siblings who have children, and I know that there's a constant struggle with trying to get your child to sit down and pay attention to the work, right? And they're on the computer. And the interesting thing I would say is maybe 2 years ago, if your child was sitting in front of a computer for 6 hours a day, you would be livid. You would be thinking that they're playing a video game, surfing the internet. You probably was trying your best to stop them from doing that. Now the interesting part is you actually, we're encouraging them to do that, but obviously for a different purpose. So it is definitely a challenging, and my heart compassion goes out to all the parents dealing with that type of those challenges. Does anyone else would like to add some input on what parents can be doing to better maximizing the virtual learning experience?
I can speak up as a parent, and I think Devin was right on. I think checking in with your student and checking in with your teacher as well, the teacher of your student, is definitely very helpful. We've also found, as well as several of the parents I've spoke to, is seeing if your child can kind of keep on some type of routine or schedule. That seems to help them as well. But I think communication more than anything is so important, I think, nowadays as well. We're all doing extra and we're all doing it together. And so while it may seem a lot, it is. As a parent, it's a lot. Trust me, I know. I have been there in that virtual environment as well. I think we're only going to grow and get better together if we're still communicating, and that means just checking in with your child as well, not just their teacher. And you'll start to notice and see some things. And I love them said, you don't have to be the mathematician, right? And know all of that. But if you are still checking in with your child to see how they are doing, I think mentally as well too. I think that's important. And I'm sure my panelists will agree too. The mental aspect with our children is just as important as if they completed an assignment. I think that goes a long way with helping our children virtually.
Yeah, of course, we all know it's been of the utmost importance for parents to be involved in their child's education. But I guess what we're experiencing now is just it's no longer optional. You can no longer get away with not being completely engaged. Your children can afford it, to be quite frank. which actually leads me to the next question. So when we consider that schools are opening, when we consider the schools that are opening, tend to be those from wealthier communities, what sort of disadvantage are our children from lower economic communities being challenged with? Artensi, go ahead.
Well, I would say, even though that we are in a very low income city, I mean, yes, it's a city. We have provided laptops to every student, brand new laptops for every student in the school. You can refuse it if you want to use your own. Also, we have hotspots available for students, and also Cox Communications, the cable company that everyone has here, actually is providing free internet for students in Pinal County up for 6 months. And after that is a very low rate to purchase. Even if their parents had like a bill from them for like 4 years ago, they still will upload your cable. So that is something that I would say that is an advantage being in a low income community, that they did kind of look out for us a little bit. So that's something that our school has done.
I actually wanted to kind of think about this question in maybe a more wider ranging impact. So I think everyone on this panel can attest that the virtual learning is something will be lost. Like we have that general understanding versus actually going in person. But kind of want to get your opinion on what do you think is going to be the long-term impact of this blip in the child's educational experience. So they've been, in the classroom for X number of years, and then we've had the COVID-19 pandemic where something may have been lost. So there has been a disruption in what they've become accustomed to. Does anyone have any opinions on how this may potentially impact our children in a wider ranging goal, like whether it's their career prospects as they get older or their opportunities to go to the college of their choice?
Jerry, if I may.
Absolutely.
And this might be an unpopular opinion, but I think one of the greatest challenges as a community we're going to have to address for our young folks and our students is their mental health. We're talking about potential PTSD effects from this pandemic. Many students have lost their parents. In my district alone, we know of 12 students who have lost their parents, have lost family members, the constant news cycle. And so, again, while I'm concerned about the academics, I know we can catch them up. I know we can make up the ABCs, but we can't bring back people from the dead. And this is something that no one has ever had to face. No one. So if as adults we are having a hard time with this, imagine how our children are feeling, which is why it's important that school districts must have a robust wraparound service system that serves the whole child and that to ensure that the basic needs are being met before anything else. Because if a child is worried about what they're going to eat for tonight, if a child is worried about where they're going to lay their head, they're not going to worry about the test on Monday morning. We have to ensure that districts are meeting the basic needs of our most vulnerable students if we want them to achieve. There was a recent study that came out that said 55% of stressors from high school students, 55% of stressors that come from this pandemic is all about homework. It's about homework. So I don't feel we've necessarily let up the foot on academics. What I would call for is more empathy, more patience and understanding and flexibility. Now, that doesn't mean just to let folks get away with anything they want to do, but we must be flexible, patient, and empathetic to the realities that many of our students are facing. In the Tulsa Union High School District, we have delivered 750,000 meals to our students and their siblings. We've curbside pickups. We've had over 250,000 curbside meal pickups since August. So we know that families are struggling. We know our students are experiencing extreme hardships, and we know the many inequities that exist between our communities and the communities that are more well off. And so, again, I think the conversation, or at least in my opinion, the conversation we need to be having is the PTSD effects post-pandemic on our students, and what are we going to do to address those?
Thank you so much, Kevin. And as I was thinking about this question, I can only imagine, when we talk about the inequities in education, and I think we've all seen this in all facets of life. This has seemed to just widen the gap, and I know that small things grow, and the impact, grows exponentially over time. The idea that a child may have had a less than perfect education experience for the year, can have lasting impacts. And I just wonder, like, how that will, what sort of long-term effects that will have. And I know we won't know that answer now, but I think in due time it will present itself. I want to go over to Nia, and again, as a parent with children in school that are in school learning, just wanted to get an idea of like what what was your rationale, like what was your thought process, what factors did you consider, were there any reservations about sending them back, and if so, what were they?
Honestly, Jerry, there were a lot of hesitations to put both of my children back into school. My youngest child, he does suffer from some health issues and concerns. And that was something my husband and I really had to take into consideration as we put him back into unknown times. And they still are unknown. We had to even go to most of his doctors to even see if it was okay to make sure that he was able to go back into the classroom. We even had to get the step of getting notes from some of the doctors as well. As we started in school, we also had to sign almost an opt-in letter that they had us call and sign. Each and every student, their parent had to sign that form for them to go in. And it stated several things that you as a parent are going to be responsible for as your child goes back into school. And that is for the safety of not only obviously the school, the administrators, the teachers, and the students themselves. So we had some special letters even from the doctors to say, if he coughs or sneezes, it's okay. It won't be COVID. It may just be allergies at that point. So there were so many hesitations to bring them in. Are the pods, as I stated earlier, are those truly safe? I've known from other parents pre-COVID, as we all used to say, if you give your child Tylenol, it's okay. They can go to school. They'll deal with it. So, you hope that same sentiment doesn't come into COVID times as well, as we're here with the children and they just send their children to school. It's okay. We need you to go to school. And in some instances, I know there are some parents that do need their child to go to school, but we just hope in these times they do take consideration into the other children that are there with them at school and how COVID just spread so quickly to other children as well. So there were so many hesitations to bring them back into the classroom. But for us, we knew the overall well-being of both of our children were to bring them back to that type of environment. And we had to take those risks, whether it was buying the special mask. We also helped the school as well, as the school reached out to help with air purifiers. Yes, we'll raise our hand to do that as well. Anything we could do to make the environment that we are sending our children into something a little bit better. Us as parents, of course, I think we all just said that before. You'll do anything you can to change that. So for us, yes, it wasn't an easy please go back into school sort of decision. It was something we had to think about, something we had to honestly and converse, right? Like I said, with doctors and others to make sure this is going to be the right decision for our children and the well-being that they'll have.
Thank you so much, Nia, for that in-depth answer. And, obviously it's a personal one when you're dealing with not only children, but your children and the struggle and risk that you have to deal with. So thank you for sharing that. I know, Artinta, you wanted to answer the last question, so forgive me for skipping over you. But before we get back to you, for the audience, if you have any questions, this is the time to drop them in the chat now. We have a few minutes, a few more minutes ahead of us that we'll be able to answer your questions as best as possible. So if you do have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. We'll pull them up in just a moment. But we've got a couple of more questions to ask our panelists, and then we'll get to the audience questions. So Artinta,
Yes.
I know we spoke earlier, and you wanted to address the question about the impact it's having on the children's education, both present and future.
Yes, because I do get a lot of questions from parents, from other teachers and things of that, like how is college going? Are students going to college? What are colleges doing as far as ACT, SAT, all of those questions. As far as right now, Colleges are being a little bit more lenient than they used to. You do not have to have an SAT or ACT score up until 2024 as of right now. Because I know a lot of parents ask this question. Up until 2024, students do not need to have an ACT or SAT score. They are basing things off of grades. So usually, I'm just going to put it out there, as far as ASU, you have to have a 3.0 to get into school for automatic acceptance. Right now, they're being more lenient. They are allowing students who have a 2.4 or anything of that. You can just write a personal statement as a student, and they will begin to start accepting students. As of right now, our school has 100% college acceptance. Scholarship money is coming more than ever before. So we're a little excited about that, but I did, allow the students to know that it's okay that you wasn't able to take the SAT or ACT, the standardized national tests. Again, because I get a lot of emails about this from people all over, that you do not have to have the ACT or the SAT test scores up until 2024, and they are reviewing it right now. They may just wipe it out. I know some states right now are going through different meetings and different things to see if they're just going to just wipe it out completely and just have a standard test within that state and not the ACT and SAT, because students do stress about that, and that is the least of the stress that kids need right now at this point. Right now, parents do not need to be stressed about that. Kids don't need to be stressed about that. They need to be worried about different things and home life. So that is the least of their stress. So that is really good. I'm really excited about that part. If there's a silver lining in this.
Well, I mean, if we can find them, let's call them out. If we can find a silver lining in this. But you bring up a point, and I actually wanted to ask Dr. Myers if she might be able to provide some context to this. When it comes to annual standardized testing for our students, how is that being handled in this school year?
Yes. So in the Cartwright School District, we are currently working through that. Our students who have English as a second language or English learners are required to take the state AZELA assessment. And so our administrators have all connected with the students requiring that assessment, and we're bringing them safely in. And our administrators have shared and our teachers have shared just how wonderful it is to reconnect with our students. And so as much as it was a thinking about the fact that we had to bring students in for testing, there was a little concern, especially with teachers, because we do have such high transmission rates still. But at the same time, just seeing our students and just has brought such joy. And so same with the state testing, we are working, that is an expectation that 95% of our kids are tested. And so our administrators and staff are working through that as well to ensure, again, we're not forcing students, but we are extending the invitation, and we're grateful that our families are sending their students.
Thank you. So, and again, this conversation, and it kind of goes down a rabbit hole sometimes. But you mentioned the teachers, right? So we understand. I think when we think about school, we think about the children first. It's just inherently that's where your mind would go. But maybe we don't think enough about the teachers and their perspective, and their opinions. And I guess by definition, they will be a little bit older and maybe at a higher risk to contracting COVID, and maybe some of the negative ramifications of having contracted the disease. I wanted to ask, and Hortensia, we'll start with you as the teacher on the panel, the educator on the panel, I guess that's a better term, and Dr. Myers as well, if you and Devin. Everyone can answer this question. I really want to hear your perspective. How are the teachers' concerns being received? Like what sort of processes are in place so the teachers can express their opinions, their wants, wishes, and desires as far as virtual learning or going back into the classroom? Hortensia?
Well, for us, we were not asked. We were not asked if we wanted to come back to school. A couple of us, just kind of stopped our regional directors and asked questions like, will we have temperature checks? Will we have different things? Because we do have some teachers that are expecting children right now. We have teachers that are heart transplant survivors. We have people who have, are elderly. teachers as well. So we were not asked. We're just pretty much were told like, hey, it's time to come back to school. See you guys on Monday morning, 8 o'clock. The parents, they want you guys there. So you're going to be back into school. So that's pretty much what was the process for us. Have anyone checked on teachers? Because I also think teachers' mental health is also important as well. I know we talk about the kids, and that is very important, but also with the educators, the teachers, the administrators. I think those type of questions need to come to us as well, and especially for the teachers, because the teachers are the one that's literally on the front line. There are a lot of people that are making decisions that are doing this from home. So they're not really dealing with the kids one-on-one as we are. So I do expect our input to be in it, but it has not been asked of what we are expecting, our mental health. Do we need anything of any sort? It's just pretty much just come back to work. So I think that mental health is also very important to check on us as well. And I think just because people feel like we're adults, you should be able to handle this, that I feel that's what they were kind of saying. I don't want to speak for them, but that's just my opinion.
And again, maybe it goes without saying, but I'm going to say it. Mental health is one of the topics that's in recent history, I guess, is getting more attention. But I don't think we're at the level that where it needs to be as far as understanding mental health issues and embracing it, and leaning into it, figure out solutions. We've been going to see a therapist, So I noticed many of you mentioned mental health in today's broadcast, and that might be another topic for the future of Meet the Leaders. So note taken. But Dr. Myers, and with the decision to not open up the schools, I know that when we spoke earlier, you mentioned the perspective of the teachers having been considered. So if you can elaborate a bit about that.
Sure, thank you. So, I would say what I appreciate most throughout this pandemic has been, as I shared earlier, that our superintendent has really made communication a priority. And so from the very beginning, we had a task force that was then broken into multiple subcommittees. And so their input was constantly considered. Teachers were represented, our educational support professionals, administrators, just constantly taking everybody's input and feedback into consideration. And then, as I shared, I share this because our teachers and staff will tell me this, that they just feel like those lines of communication are open. Our superintendent sends out an email every Monday morning. And if someone responds to that email, she will carry on that communication. And then I'm in my role, I'm constantly emailing the entire district as well. And I know because that's how our district is. Our motto is one team, una familia, and our superintendent walks the talk when it comes to that. And so I know she expects that of me too. If someone emails me and asks a question or wants me to call them, we communicate. We try to ensure that our staff know that we're in this together. And so we've just tried. And then, as I shared, if something comes up, even Mr. Del Palacio had shared about the food and how our families have been dependent on that. And so I remember from the very beginning, we started serving food the very day that we closed, and just getting input from the community. And I remember seeing families with it. They were in tears, just so grateful. We're proud to share that we've served over 5 million meals since our closure. And just breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, all of the above, just anything we could do, whatever feedback we got, like I said, whether it was surveying our parents, surveying teachers, surveying whoever it was, any feedback we received, we've always considered it and are just trying to really work together as a team through this, because we know it's not easy. And as everyone shared, mental health, we knew we were struggling. Suicide was on the rise even prior to that pandemic. And we saw how the numbers rose drastically once the pandemic began. And so we continue to address those concerns as well as a team.
Thank you, Dr. Myers. So again, if you have any questions in the audience, now is the time to drop them in the chat. Just want to give you a final opportunity to ask any questions of our panelists. They've been great. You all have been great, providing great insight. But if there's anything that we have missed, this is your opportunity to ask the question and give you all the opportunity to get those questions answered. So before we close out for this evening, I wanted to just give everyone a round robin opportunity to share some closing thoughts before we depart for the day. We don't have any questions coming in from our audience. So Devin, we'll start with you if you would like to share some closing thoughts.
Well, before I get into my closing remarks, I just want to give a huge virtual clap to my neighboring district, Cartwright. 5 million meals is no easy feat. Do you understand the logistics and the planning that goes into that? I mean, that's just amazing and outstanding. So virtual clap to you all, and a virtual hand clap to our teachers, our bus drivers, our every staff member on campus, because every staff member plays a critical role. Every staff member is there with our youth in the community while parents are at work or other places. So everyone on campus plays a critical role in education. They all deserve to be appreciated. You know, I'll never forget what a teacher once told me when this pandemic first got started, and a lot of folks were uneasy and unsure. She said, Mr. Del Palacio, she goes, I'm dying to go back into the classroom, but I don't want to die because I went back to the classroom. So I know our teachers and all of our staff want to come back. They miss their students. They miss it. That's why they got into this work. But they also have families too. And we ought to remember that. They also live, they also might have parents, right? They also might have their own kids who might be vulnerable. So they're human just like us. I think sometimes we forget that. They're regular people just like us. And they deserve the same level of respect and care when it comes to planning for reopening. Because I'll tell you this, Mike Tyson said it best. Everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face. All right. Everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face. And so we can plan to the best we can, but there's no district that can guarantee 100% the safety of your child during this pandemic. It's just impossible. So we have to take this very serious. We have to continue to encourage our community to get vaccinated. We have to please get vaccinated. That's first and foremost. And we also have to encourage our community to be vigilant and not ease up. Continue to wear your mask, wash your hands, follow the CDC guidelines. We cannot let up on that, or else we'll never get back to a place of where we can go back to socializing. And that's another thing too, is that I want us all to think about the normal and really define what normal means. Because if we return back to normal after this pandemic, I think we have done our community and our students a great disservice. Because a return back to normal means going back to the many inequities that existed prior. So before we go back to quote unquote normal, we must all work towards dismantling the systemic barriers that prevent our kids from reaching their full potential. We have to address these inequities now before we bring our kids back to this quote unquote normal. This is the window of our opportunity to really, really make the change that we know that is needed in our school systems. This is the time to do it. And so I want us all to think about that before we rush back into the old way of doing things. Let's think about and imagine a new way that could truly uplift all of our kids, at the same time helping them reach their full potential. And so, again, I just want to thank everyone for their time and for tuning in this evening. And I'll be sure to place my contact information in the chat. I'm happy to answer any questions offline. And again, thank you all for your patience and for your support.
Devin, thank you so much for your input and your passion. And as a native New Yorker, anytime you can squeeze in a quote from Mike Tyson, it's always appreciated. Thank you. Nia, we'll go to you if you'd like to share some closing thoughts.
Yes, great. I do want to start out first with thank you. Of course, thank you, of course, for having me on the panel here. But more importantly, as a parent here speaking with the fellow panelists that are administrators, that are teachers, and that are, of course, educators in our school district, we as parents do thank you. And I think probably pre-COVID, we didn't say that a lot and maybe even took for granted what you do for our children. You know, one of our most precious things that we send to you Monday through Friday, most weeks. And so we say thank you to you. And again, I encourage parents that are hearing this recording either live or watching it later, tell them thank you. Those two words truly do go a long way for anyone, but especially in these times, it's nice to hear thank you, especially again to all of everyone that is on the campuses of each school. So again, thank you. I do also want to say, if your school is transitioning, going back into the classroom, just take some time to think about it as well. Some parents have certain reactions to going back into the classroom, and some can't wait. But you know what's best for your child. And so I would just advise you to really think about what is best for them. How have they been learning these past, honestly, almost a year now? What steps do you need to take as a parent as you start to get them into the classroom, if that's something that you would like to do as well? And if not, I am also here to say it's okay if you don't decide to put your child back into the classroom. It is your decision. And obviously you're going to make the best one that suits your family and your children. And then finally, communicate. Please communicate to your teachers, to the school board, anyone that you can. You are a parent and your voice is valid, but please make sure too you're communicating wisely. It's great to share some things that can be fixed, but as I said in the beginning, it's always nice to thank them for what they're doing as well. So that communication can go both ways with your teachers and the community as a whole. So please thank them. Think about what's best for your child, and don't forget to communicate as well, best that you can, to always encourage and do best for your children. And thank you again, Jerry, for having me on the panel today.
Oh, no, thank you for sharing your time with us. We appreciate all of the input and the passion that you brought to the program today. We did have a couple of last minute questions come in, so I'll actually reserve these to the last panelists who still need to provide the closing thoughts. And Artensia, I'll give you the question. I guess you can offer whatever response you have to that, but then continue on into your closing thoughts. And that question comes in from Liz Woody. Says she's asking for any virtual teachers tips to assist with learning online and some of the difficulties to overcome the daily experience of having to learn and understand, even for the parents to be better equipped to help. So do you have any insight for teachers who are having to conduct their classrooms virtually?
Yes. All of our classes at my school are virtual. So some of the different things that we do at the beginning, we do have a wellness check to make sure that the students are doing well. If they have any questions, communication is key. That is something that we pretty much tell all students if they are remote or if they are in the building, that do you have any questions? And also with the online teaching, we do have a help button on there. A lot of kids don't see it. You know, we have to point it out to them. There is a help button if they have a question later on and your teacher is not available at that moment. So there are tutorials that actually will speak back to them if they have a question. So that is something that you can use, but make sure that you communicate with your teacher. Educators, we work 24 hours a day. Some of us, you'll get an email from us from like 12 at night and 5:30 in the morning. Then you start wondering, like, when do these people sleep? So you can email your teacher. If your teacher have a Google Meet phone number, call that number, or if they give you their actual phone number, some of us do give out our personal phone number. That is something that you can also do as well. That'll help, but communication is key. But thank you again, Jerry, for asking me to be on this panel. I think it is very important to have these conversations, and also from educators, because it's important to hear from us as well. I know a lot of different people have their input, and it's great to hear those things, but it is really amazing that you guys are giving us a platform to be able to speak on this topic right here. That is very important, and it is pretty much a life or death situation right now that we are in. So if we can find any silver lining, parents out there, if you can find any silver lining with this situation, please do so. Relax. Right now it's school. We are, as far as teachers, we are showing grace to students as much as possible. If they are at home or if they are in the classroom, we show as much grace. Communication is key. To speak with us, to speak with the administrators, just everyone. Just communication is key. And that's it that I have to say. Thank you again so much, Jerry. And thank you guys. You guys have some great insight as well. So this was really good. Thank you guys so much. This was a great panel.
So really quick, I mentioned earlier in the broadcast that I owe Artensia because she was actually a last minute fill-in for today's broadcast. And, you know, I called, I can't even, I'm gonna say noon.
Yes, it was noon when I was at lunch because I also have to do lunch duty. So I was watching lunch and I also was talking to you when I was in class as well. So that was something that you were doing. So thank you so much for inviting me. That was really amazing. So
No, thank you. I'm glad you're happy to join us and again bringing the perspective of the educator to the discussion.
and
So,
I'll put my Cash App down there so that you can pay.
okay, big audience. She's going to cash us. Are you talking to me?
Yes, you personally.
No, really. Thank you so much. Dr. Myers, we have one other question coming that I will pose to you if you don't mind answering, and then again, closing thoughts. But actually, when I asked the last question, did you have a response to that as far as tips that you wanted to share, or we can just get into the next question?
Well, I was just going to share, since that question was asked,
Yeah,
we have amazing teachers that have put together professional development. And every time we've had a different training, short little 30-minute videos, we post them on our website. And so for the teachers that have those questions on how to work through some of the challenges, I would say visit the Cartwright School District website. And we've got some amazing professional development online there available to anyone.
Okay, awesome. So, and again, there's one final question. If Dr. Myers, if you can answer that, and then you can proceed into the closing thoughts you would like to share. And this question comes from Gisette Knight. Growing up, it was mandatory for us to present our medical records showing we were vaccinated. Will the school boards make it mandatory for kids to get the COVID vaccine?
You know, that's, as a district, that's something that that's come up. That question has come up as well. I know in the Cartwright School District, a prior board meeting, our board did decide to make it a condition of employment for all school administrators or district administrators that they have that vaccine. And our staff have been asking that. Will it be required for teachers and staff? And then they've also asked for students as well. At this point, we can't answer that. We do know that right now the vaccine is our greatest hope. It's one of the mitigation strategies. We know how important it is. And so so right now we're just doing our best to educate on it. And I would say, as far as to Ms. Knight, it's, I think we're all learning about this together and seeing what's best and what's going to keep everyone safest, since again, as everyone has said, we're talking about saving lives right now. And we know that the vaccine can do that.
Thank you, Dr. Myers. And if you'd just like to continue on with your closing thoughts, we'd love to hear from you.
Well, I don't know that I could say it any better than our panelists have here. So I just thank you, Jerry, for the time, and thank you all for the opportunity to learn from each and every one of you. You've shared amazing stories, and like I said, I feel like I've learned so much, and we'll be tuning into this in the future, Jerry. And so, and now I'm fired up to address the inequities, as Mr. Del Palacio shared. So thank you all for the learning and for the inspiration.
Thank you so much, Dr. Myers. And again, thank you all to the panelists for sharing your time, energy, and expertise with our audience today. It was a phenomenal discussion, COVID in the classroom. Again, we're talking about our children, we're talking about our future, we're talking about the future leaders that are going to be running our country when we become old. So it's important that we are pouring into them and giving them tools and resources they need to succeed. Again, regarding the vaccine, it's a challenge to all of my fellow community leaders within the greater Phoenix area and throughout the country for that matter. We understand that our community, the Black and brown communities, are not taking the vaccine at nearly the same rate as other communities. It's not being made available to our communities as they are, for other communities, comparative communities. So again, I think this is a challenge for each of us to do what we can to help educate, help inform, help encourage those who are able to take the vaccine to go ahead and do so. We've had plenty of discussions on this, on the idea of whether we want to encourage people to do that or inform them. I think that by being informed, you will be encouraged to take the vaccine. So with that being said, I will yield the floor to President and CEO of the Greater Phoenix Urban League, George Dean, to provide his closing thoughts. Take it away, George.
Thank you, Jerry. We are just about out of time. I just want to extend a very, very special thanks to our panelists. I think that they came along, they have a lot of passion, and this is really important to them, which makes it important for the work that they do in terms of working with our children and the health and safety of our children and so forth. That is so very, very important. And if we got everybody doing that, we're going to be okay. Our children is our destiny, equals our destiny. And we're going to be in safe hands as long as we have people like the panelists that we had this evening to be there with us. I would just say to the audience to please get vaccinated as soon as you are eligible, get appointments and get vaccinated. There are vaccination sites that are going up daily in different places other than at State Farm Stadium and at Phoenix Stadium and so forth. So look around, find yourself, find out when you're eligible to go and get vaccinated. That is so very, very important. And with that, I would say good evening. Thank you for watching. Thank you for participating. And I hope that this was a meaningful experience for you and you got some very good information and saw the passion of the parents, the educators, and the school board members and so forth in terms of what's going on. So with that, I will say good night. See you next month.